And I don't do it as good as Greg. I'm sorry, everybody. But good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Cover One Buffalo post-game show. I'm your host tonight, Aaron Quinn, and we are without Greg Thompson, who is overseas right now, but hopefully he's in here in the chat watching. But I am joined by Cover One's own Ryan Sullivan. Ryan, welcome. I'm sorry that your first intro to the post-game show had to be this way. We will talk about the loss here coming up. I wanted to introduce you here first.
Hey, Aaron. We were talking offline. This is really cool for me. I shared with Aaron. This was really my first Bills podcast that got me into content creating, kind of sparked my creative venture into content creating. So this is really cool to kind of be on here. It's kind of like when you watch when guys get called up to the NBA and they say they watch LeBron growing up. I watch Aaron and Greg
Hey, whoa,
coming up. I watched you guys, and now I'm on your show.
Appreciate it, man. We appreciate it. You're doing great work for the whole Cover One crew here, and we will talk about all the great stuff we have at Cover One here. But we are here tonight to talk about the Miami Dolphins 21-19 victory over the Buffalo Bills down in a sweltering Miami. What is it? Miami Gardens, Florida. It's not technically Miami Gardens, Florida. Not the prettiest game that I've ever watched. Very typical, just AFC East kind of sludge fest. Obviously, injuries played a big role in the narrative that will come out this week. I think, before we break down this game, individual, position by position, Ryan, I think the first thing that comes to me is the sort of ability for this Bills team to withstand an onslaught of injuries. We're talking 14 injuries going into the week, leading up to the week on the injury report. I've never seen it that long. I've been doing this for a while now, and we track this stuff every Wednesday. I've never seen it get to the actual bottom of the injury report going into a game, and that showed up in a big way throughout this game and matched, you add that's not a good thing to go into an early season game with, and a lot of key players, right? And then you add that in with the heat that they experienced. They said at 10 a.m. the field temperature was like 120 degrees on the field. So you add in not a great amount of depth, a bunch of guys coming in and playing that haven't been used to getting starting reps, and you're adding 120 degrees. You really saw that in the second half of this game with guys just out all the time, out on the sideline, cramping up. So kudos to the Bills for coming in, facing injury, facing all this stuff, and still making this an exciting game down to the last play.
Yeah, I mean, it was a Murphy's Law game. Everything that could go wrong can go wrong. Looked like every play there was someone on the ground for the Bills. We talk about some of those bad weather games in Buffalo that you can't really take a lot away from them, right? Last year, like the Atlanta game where it was snowing. We talk about bad weather games. You can't take a lot from that. This was kind of the other side of that. It was so hot. So many guys went down that I don't think in the long term there's a lot of things you can take away. There's not a lot of extrapolation you can do from this game just because of everything that went on externally. Brown goes out with heat illness. Diggs was on and off with cramping. The whole wide receiver core looked gassed. If it's at 100 degrees, does Isaiah McKenzie get out of bounds on that play? Maybe does he have a little bit more juice? Just so many external factors, and that's not excusing anything. They had the ball forever in this game. We'll get into that, and they should have won this game. But so many external factors that it's hard to come away with too many long-term concerns.
Yeah, it was a really weird game because there was so much stacked, going against you going into this game. Obviously, I didn't read off the whole injury report. I'm sure everyone listening now knows you went into this game, obviously, without the starting safeties. Micah Hyde done for the year with the IR, we heard yesterday. And then you heard Jordan Poyer was not going to play here this morning. So you're without the starting safeties. Dane Jackson, obviously, out with the neck injury from a week ago. So you're really going with guys that had a collective 3 starts in your defensive backfield. So I think everyone was concerned about that. We knew that was going to be a tough task to overcome. And then this morning, you saw with the inactive report, obviously Ed Oliver was still out with that ankle, and then Mitch Morse was also an inactive for this game. And that, to me, when the Mitch Morse injury came in, it was almost just that one too many blows to the gut going into this game to feel really confident, even though the Bills still have a number of remaining big name starters. After that, you're just stressing so many key pieces. But even with all that against them, they really did put in a good performance, but they really shot themselves in the foot a number of times, even though they were still in this game and really statistically dominated the game in a lot of ways. Total yards, Buffalo had 497 total yards to Miami's 212. On third down, Bills weren't great, but they were 11 out of 18. It stinks that they had to get 18 third downs. But on third down, they're 8 out of 11 out of 18, and Miami was 3 out of 8. Like, Bills won a lot of the metrics that you would think would lead to winning football. I had an even draw on toxic differential for this game. So it was 4-4 for toxic differential. So everything was stacked against this team, and they really shot themselves in the foot, but the game was there for the taking, even with all that going on.
Yeah. It just so many, again, you hide the score on this game and you read off all those other stats. You would think it would be a Bills dominating win. And I think 9 times out of 10, it is a Bills dominating win. There's so many points you can go back and look throughout this game. We'll get into offensive line play, but you talk about that fumbled snap. That could probably be points right there. The Tyler Bass kick, that's point right there. So many things just got left on the field that it not something you typically see from a McDermott coach team. And again, I think a lot of that had to do with the heat, with the factors, with the injuries, just guys not with the experience playing meaningful, impactful snaps in this game.
Yeah, no, I agree. So let's, we have a normal flow to this show. This one's going to be a weird one for me. We don't have Greg. I miss you, Greg. If you are out there watching, you're beautiful. Ryan, you're filling in fantastic. But so we have a normal flow to the show, and hopefully we'll maintain it here throughout. But this was a tough game for me to digest in the normal way. I had a lot of anxiety heading into this game as it got closer and all this worse news continued to come out. First time I felt anxiety about a game here this year. And then with it going to the end like that, I still haven't fully digest everything. So if I miss anything big, we'll have to circle back later in the week on the Wednesday show. But that's the tough thing here, Ryan. Welcome to going live on a post-game show. Sometimes you forget some of the big plays. So we'll get right into this. Normally we do it, and we're going to lead off this time again. We're going to lead off with the quarterback, Josh Allen, here. I don't know what there is to say. He put this team on his back, and it wasn't perfect. He made mistakes in this game. He put the ball in some tough spots, but again, towards the end of this game, you could see he was clearly just giving every single thing he had. I even think on that last throw, he just didn't get his feet set and get a throw off because he just didn't have much left in him. I think that he was had put the team on his back so many times. We had a drive of 9 minutes. It was what was it? I have it somewhere here. 20 play, 87 yards, 9 minute and 22 second drive that ended in a field goal, by the way. And this team was washed from that point on. And I don't know that they ever recovered, but kudos to Josh Allen for still going out and putting on a show and putting this team on his back with all the injuries, without a Mitch Morse in a blitz heavy defense where he needs the protection. He went for 42 out of 63. He completed 42 passes out of 63 attempts. Josh Allen in the last 20 games, guys, has only averaged 37.8 attempts in a game. He just had 63 pass attempts in a football game in 120-degree weather, putting the team on his back. He had 400 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was sacked 4 times in this game. A tough, long day for Joshua Patrick Allen. Had 8 rushes, 47 yards, 5.9. He took a couple shots on some of these rushes today too in this loss. Just it's going to be a long evening of recovery and transition this week for Josh Allen, but he put it all out there. There's nothing you can say that, this team flows with him, and the only reason they even had a shot in this one this Sunday was because Josh Allen suited up for him.
Literally, there's nothing you can say wrong about what Josh Allen did in this game, right? Some turnover worthy plays, as PFF might call them. But they put too much on Josh Allen's plate. They asked him to throw the ball 63 times. I don't know if that's a record. For his career.
I looked it up quick. I didn't see anything yet.
And once again, for this is something we had in the offseason, this fear that McDermott was going to become this run first coach once Dable left. Obviously not true. And it would be, I am the last person who's going to talk about we need to run the ball more. But it would be nice if there was a little bit of a run game. I don't know what it is after this game. Running success, I should say. It'd be nice if we had some success running the ball. I don't know what it is after this game. Going into this game, the Bills were 30th in EPA per rush. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine it's much better after this game.
Let's transition into that. Talk about the run game here for a little bit, because I do think, we're talking about that 63 pass attempts. And I do think that's a direct correlation from an ineffective run game. And obviously you had the 43-yarder by Moss, but outside of that, you take that away. And again, Josh Allen is your leading rusher in this game. You take his ability to run. You can't rely on that. And especially in a game where you're relying on him to be your offense in the pass game. Talk about this run game really let this offense down today.
Yeah, that's just, you could not get anything going. They try, and it feels like when they do try to get it going, they force it. I go back and I think it was the second offensive drive where they handed it off twice to Moss,
yeah.
put him in 3rd and 8. And every time this Miami defense was able to get in the 3rd and long, they were really bringing kind of those unique pressures, those unique blitzes that Miami's been known for the last few years, and caused chaos for Josh Allen. And then they got a fumble out of it. It's just no one, even Devin Singletary, who's been the workhorse, wasn't able to get anything going. They tried to get James Cook going. And it, like you said, besides that one run from Moss, there was just no helping the game. And once again, this isn't a team that needs to run more, but just having something there, something that you can hand the ball off in 1st down and get 4 yards, put yourself in positive game situations, positive game scripts.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The Bills, again, offensively seem to be laboring today, where Miami, even though they didn't have as good of an offensive output statistically, they seemed a little bit easier when it was time to move the ball down the field, where the Bills seemed to really labor for yards and playing behind the sticks a little bit. And I think that the run game difference in between the two teams is where you saw the efficiency in them being able to move the ball on a hot day like this. And it's hard to put that on your offensive line on a hot weather day like this to go out there and establish a run game. But there's got to be something more than what you're getting for this amount of production, right? You had Josh Allen, 8 carries, 47 yards, averaging 5.9. Great. We love that. We know that that's there. Zach Moss, his is a little inflated here with that 43-yard run because he had 4 for 46 and 11.5, but really not to take that away from him. Other than that, he had a bunch of 1-2 yard runs that everybody's continuing to see from Zach Moss. You alluded to it. That was a frustrating drive where he got 2 1-yarders in a row and then Josh gets sacked. That's a tough one for Bills fans to sit here this week and defend keeping Moss in, but then he does get the 43-yarder, which really could have flipped the game. But it obviously wasn't enough, but really was one of the few big explosive plays the offense was able to generate. Singletary was a tough one though for me because he doesn't have a great game on the ground, right? 9 for 13, 1.5 average. A little bit, this is tough because we'll talk about it with the offensive line. Mitch Morse being out definitely hurts the run, and Brown not finishing the game, and Quessenberry coming in probably hurts the run a little bit too. But Singletary, let's transition over here to wide receivers and tight ends because Singletary had quite a nice afternoon as a pass catcher here. He went, let's see, let me pull it up. As a pass catcher, Devin Singletary had 9 receptions, 78 yards, 8.7 average with 1 touchdown and a long of 22. At one point in the second quarter, or early in the first quarter, he had like 30 yards on 2 dump offs. It wasn't that necessarily that Josh hit him running. He took a dump off and took it for 20 something yards, took it for 10 yards. So he was having a nice game through the air. But talk about some of the other receivers and what you saw out of this pass catching group here today.
Well, it just looked like they had trouble finding space today. You talk about what defenses do against Buffalo, and then it's put that ceiling on. And the past few games, and even going back to the end of last year, Buffalo had, this ability where when teams were kind of playing deep, hit guys underneath, run for first downs, and it seemed like there just wasn't a lot of open space, and every yard was super, super hard to earn in this game for the receivers. And, I don't think there's anything anyone did particularly wrong, but again, there was points left on the board. The Diggs drop comes to mind on that last drive. Again, he was playing gas. How many times did he come off the field? The Davis drop in the end zone, which I see people in the chat talking, was that a fumble they should have challenged? I don't think you're ever going to get that overturned there. But, I think that's a play. Maybe if he's not injured, he makes that 9 out of 10 times. And, obviously the gaff by McKenzie, I don't know what the right moves there. Maybe he should have gone down and, maybe they just try a longer kick because they have more time to get it there. So I don't know, but there wasn't anything spectacular out of the receivers today, which just nothing wrong. They were just kind of, I don't know if not made an impact's the right word, but they were just felt like they were just kind of there. Again, it was the Josh Allen show today, and he didn't feel like there was a ton of help from anyone on the offense.
Yeah, it wasn't fantastic when Devin Singletary is your leading wide receiver, again, 9 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown. Isaiah McKenzie had a decent game though with 7 catches, 76 yards, 10.9 average with 1 touchdown as well. Diggs is your third leading receiver. Again, though, not a bad day, 7 receptions on 11 targets, 74 yards. Again, really laboring towards the end of that game. I think that stat line's looks a little worse. I think some of those targets that he missed were probably due to just overtired. Your body's just starting to shut down. So that one probably is a little deflated from where it was. Gabe Davis, 3 catches, 37 yards, obviously laboring with some of that injury still. And then you really didn't have much for production in the wide receiver room. And I'm interested to see the all 22. I'm sure Eric and Anthony and all those guys are going to break down what really happened on that back end. You don't get a great view, but it did seem like almost every time on some of the longer, third downs and stuff like that, when Josh dropped back, whatever he was looking for first wasn't there. Even though they were bringing pressure, it seemed they were taking away at least the first look that Josh was doing. And he, granted, with the banged up offensive line, still found time, evaded, got time, still played well, got yardage, but it just seemed like, there was a chunk of this game, even before the heat really started getting on people, where Stephon Diggs just was kind of quiet. And usually when this offense needs something, they just kind of go to Diggs. And it seemed like Singletary was that guy, and it was more the dump offs and getting him going when nothing was open, and they were just taking what was available. And so that kind of shows me that the yards maybe almost had 500 yards offense, but it wasn't in the traditional way we're used to seeing this Bills team sort of march down the field, getting it to the receivers and feeding those guys. It was the Dolphins did something here that I didn't see in the watch that took away what the Bills probably wanted to do in this game.
Yeah, I think the word is hard. The word that kept coming to my head was everything looked hard today on offense.
Laboring. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, laboring. And just nothing was easy. No yard was easy. No pass was easy. There was just nothing that credit to the Dolphins defense. They just made it really hard to move the ball, and credit, the Bills did move the ball. They just did a really good job of when they got to the red zone, to the plus side of the field in that second half. They did a really good job of shutting the Bills down.
Yeah. Well, and let's go to the offensive line here, because I think, talking about attrition, talking about all the things that impacted this game, here today with the dealing with the injuries, obviously huge impact on the offensive line. Mitch Moore is probably one of the more underrated Buffalo Bills here of the Sean McDermott era, but you have all these guys now. There's a lot more pressure on the center. You got a lot more pressure on Dawkins to be the sort of the leader of the offensive line, and you're dealing with this heat. These guys aren't allowed to rotate in and out like you see on the defensive side of the ball. So when, again, I alluded to that 9-play drive, you have the offensive line going out there. Is there a fair way? This is a long-winded way of getting to the question. Is there a fair way to judge an offensive line in a game like this, where it's just like you got some big dudes running around and it's 100 degrees out there and you're doing long drives? Like, the guys are going to get beat. Guys are going to give up assignments. It's going to be hard to get a run game established. And I think a little bit we saw it on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if being on the field as long as they were was almost a hindrance to them later in the game, between losing guys, between the amount of time they had to play, and the guys they ended up having to put out there. And I will say, another thing I took away overall, the theme of this game, considering who they had to play, I don't think it was as bad as it could have been, with the offensive line saying how they had to play Van Roten and they had to play Mance by the end of this game. And guys kept losing Spencer Brown, who was getting burnt in that first half before he went out anyways. I don't think, once again, these are most of the guys who played in this game, hopefully come January, aren't playing meaningful snaps anyways.
Yeah.
And again, I'm really glad you brought up center. I have in my notes written down, center is one of those positions that when everything's going right and they doing their job well, you don't even think about center.
Yeah.
And when you have a bad center like Van Roten, who messes up the snap that loses the Bills a chance to kick a field goal at the end of the half, you really start to notice that. And there was 1 or 2 botch snaps against the Titans when he had to come in. And I think I counted 2 or 3 botch snaps in this Miami game when he came in. So again, it's not super concerning, because hopefully these aren't guys we have to watch down the road. But, I just think, all things considered, I think, when again, they did about as good as you could hope that an offensive line can play. And they said at the end of the game, the whole right center to the right side of that line was new by the end of the game. The center, the right guard, and the right tackle all went out by the end of the game. So again, that's one of the reasons why I opened this by saying I don't think there's a whole lot of extrapolation you can really do with this game, especially at offensive line.
Yeah, you'll for sure see Miami fans pumping their chests on this one, and whatever. Good for you guys. Congratulations. I don't know what the chat, I'm trying to do a couple things at once here, so I don't know if the chat is full of Miami fans coming
Surprise,
in here.
There isn't a ton. I've been watching
it. Yeah, all right, good. Keep those guys in line. I know Lauren's out there. Lauren will keep them in line. Andrew, I see you guys. So keep those Miami fans in line. But they'll be puffing their chests here this week. But I agree with you. It's hard to take anything away from this about maybe who the Bills are. And I said it all week. I thought that this game was more the Super Bowl for the Dolphins than it was for the Bills. And I think you saw that in how they maybe handled some of these injuries. I think in a more meaningful game, you would probably see Mitch Morse play. I think you would see some of these other guys that would just end up suiting up for this game and getting through it. But because of where in the season it is and the bigger vision that Sean McDermott and they have for this team, I think that's why you saw them pull some of these guys back. So I'm hoping Morse is a short-term thing that we're going to get him back, and that's not going to be a big deal at all. That's a hope. I have no information as to what's going on with Mitch Morse, but that's a huge blow to deal with in a game like this. You've got a team that brings pressure, and they bring pressure from a lot of places. And Mitch Morse, well, he doesn't do it all for Josh Allen. He does a lot of that kind of conversation about how to handle the pressures with the offensive line and what to do. And so not having that put more on Josh Allen heading into a game where you already had the world on his shoulders, kind of even handling the injuries from the defensive side of the ball. So yeah, the right side looked tough, man. Emmanuel Ogbah a few times just worked our tackles. I saw him all over the field, just getting leverage, pushing guys back. He was in Josh Allen's face a few times. Ingram still, bounces around these competitive teams, but Ingram super competitive every time at the line of scrimmage. Violent hands. He's always getting around the ball. Crazy stuff. So here we're going to flash to Alan. Thank you with a generous super chat here.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you so much, Alan. He's saying people don't realize because you hear can't get enough fluids or need more fluids. Water does not fix heat stroke or heat sickness. There's a point in the kind of humidity we're taking water extremely hard, if not making you more sick. Yeah, taking water is extremely hard. Yes, yeah. I'm not a doctor, but I've heard that. Yeah.
Well, and I didn't realize before this game they were talking about the start of the game that the visitor sideline at the start of the game was always going to be in the sun, and it was like
smart.
That the entire game, which is smart. I mean, gamesmanship. Do what you got to do. When the Bills
use it.
And when the Bills build their new stadium, I'm sure they're going to do some things to try to build some gamesmanship into the stadium.
I hope so.
So it just
it got pretty bad out there. I mean, we're sitting there, my family and I are sitting there, and just some of these guys, Stephon Diggs specifically, we talked about it a couple times here, just totally gassed on the side, given every single thing he had. And Alan's comment is right that, yeah, these guys can get IVs and they can do all this stuff, but at some point your body just starts shutting down. I mean, you've done a lot of running in your life and extreme running and stuff. There's a lot of stretching and hydrating you can do, but at some point, once your body goes, it's sort of, you have to play catch up to what your body's experiencing in the moment. Sometimes you can't catch up. And it does also increase a high risk of injury. And the Bills are pretty, as much as the play stopped in this game and guys got hurt, it did not appear that I saw, at least I haven't been on Twitter since, that we saw any like crazy injuries coming up here. Kumro's knee, he walked off, but that wasn't heat related.
Someone in the chat, I saw a couple people in the chat say Allen went for x-rays. I don't know if anyone else can confirm that.
I didn't want to hear that. You guys should have kept that one to yourselves till later.
But I mean, he played at the end of the game though. So again,
that ball came out weird. Yeah. We'll have to keep an eye on that. I didn't see anything about that. Again, if anyone can confirm that, go for it. We're live here, so we can't do that. But anyway, here, final thoughts on the offensive line. Yeah, the right side not being your starters, it's tough to evaluate them. I'm sure we'll take a look at it here throughout the week, but hopefully they get healthy here and get right to start protecting Josh Allen. Josh Allen can't take 4 sacks. He can't take the type of hit and pressures. I know he evades a lot of that stuff, but that can't be the game plan for him to just constantly be taken to the ground like that. So hopefully everybody's healthy and back up here. But I'm going to toss this first one, Ryan, over to you. I don't know if you say you've been following the show for a while, and I want to test you on how long you've been following the show. You knew you had to come here and do the post-game show. And so in doing the post-game show, that means you have to do a West Herr drive of the game. Our good friends over at West Herr, the largest auto dealer in Western New York, has sponsored us here again this season. So kudos to West Herr. Thank them for sponsoring your favorite Bills post-game show here. And we do the West Herr drive of the game. It's easier to do this. I won't lie. It's a lot easier and more fun to do this when the Bills win, especially when they drop 40 points and you have multiple drives here to talk about. I'm going to hand it over to you, Ryan. What was your West Herr Buffalo Bills drive of the game today?
Well, and also it helps when they win because you see it's almost like a butterfly effect. This happened, and then they did this play, and there was a couple points I was hoping they would win this game because I had other drives in mind.
That would have mattered. Yeah.
Like the drive coming, the 3 and out of half. If they had gone on to win the game, would have been massive. Obviously, it doesn't matter in the long run now. Right. I think so. The only game for me, I think the one that was the most efficient, the cleanest, was the first drive of the game. Ken Dorsey came out with a really good scripted. Again. Yeah, he's done. I think we can get into later. So this is, I think, his weakest game as an OC so far. Some things that I wouldn't have done in this game, but those scripted plays to start the game, phenomenal. Getting Reggie Gilliam involved on whether I don't know if it was an angle route or whatever that was. He had Gilliam on there, and just some really good stuff coming out of the game. I forget what they said the record was now of consecutive opening drive scores or opening drive touchdowns for Buffalo is, but just
I don't remember, but he's 3-0 on opening drive.
Drive touchdowns, and when if they're going to give you the ball first, that's what you got to do, and they did it, and they made Miami respond. They did, but I think a game on the road, it's always impressive to come out, get a lead on the first drive, and immediately make the other team, have to claw back. So it was impressive, clean. And I liked what I saw. He's got a really good scripted set of plays through 3 weeks.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect one. I debated picking that first drive because there's nothing better than getting the ball to start, especially on a game on the road in a division rival, and taking the ball and marching down the field and scoring. That just sets such a, hey, we're here to play this game. And for so long during the drought, the Bills were unable to do that type of thing where it's like you get the ball and you just go down and it's clockwork. You're just going to go and you're going to score and you're going to be up 7-0. It's nice to know that we have a team to do that. So I do love a good first drive of the game. So that's a great one to pick. I'm going with a different one tonight. So I'm glad I let you go and you didn't steal my thunder here. I'm going to go with the Bills. So it was 7-7. It was the one we talked about, the drive we talked about had just happened where it was Moss 1 yard, the 3rd and 8. Josh gets hit from behind. The ball comes out. Miami gets the ball, super good field position. The defense is a little gas. They come out and score pretty quick, ties it up 7-7. The Bills come out. This is a response drive, and they come out with a 14-play, 75 yard, 6-minute and 38 drive, and it was a great response. It wasn't all clean, but you had the back-to-back Kumaro catches where Kumaro ended up getting hurt and taken out the field. You ended up having a 4th and 2 where Allen got it running. Again, struggled on third downs. There's the 18 third down situations, even just getting in that many third downs and just struggling to, hit a 4th down situation and keep the drive going. Josh gets it. Ingram gets a 9-yard sack on Allen on a blown, I think it was Spencer Brown got blown up on a play with Ingram, and ended up Josh Allen with a 9-yard sack. But then he hit McKenzie for 27 yards, and they ended up hitting McKenzie on a 3rd and goal for the touchdown to go up 14-7. I thought that was a great response to just, that's the kind of drive in the past where, all right, the Bills come out, you have a great drive, another team responds with a good, or the other team responds with you making a huge mistake in scoring. That would unravel for Buffalo in years past, and then they would come out and punt or get another turnover. The game would just unravel on you. And it would even, a few years ago, do that on Josh. To see them just come back out and respond in that way and just say, okay, well, let's get this game back on the tracks and go out and put a drive together, showed me, at that moment, I really thought the Bills wouldn't be stopped. They said, okay, like they made that mistake similar to like they did in the Rams game where this team's going to beat themselves making mistakes. But if they can put together drives like this, they'll be just fine. And that was really, after that, we didn't see the Bills. That was probably the least labored effort to score, was at the 14-7 mark in this game. And so that's my West Herr drive of the game, because everything else from there just looked not like a pretty football game to me. And so let's go into, I'm going to segue, and now I'm going to take the mic from you here. I'm going to go first here with the Uncle Jumbo's responsible play of the game. And honestly, I want to kick it over to you because we're going to just talk about it a little bit. I don't have a responsible play of the game today. I have an irresponsible play of the game. I have this game was drunk on Uncle Jumbo's, and they were totally irresponsible. I didn't like pretty much everything about the way the game went, the coaching. I didn't love some of the calls. I just feel like everything about the game was pressing, and that Miami sort of even had a mental challenge, a mental edge in this game, and that everything stacked against the Bills was just sort of too much to take on, and everyone was pressing in moments that they maybe otherwise wouldn't. I don't know what the 4th down bot said about that when they ended up going for the field goal attempt and didn't end. It was like a 4th and 4. Josh was saying, let's go for it on the side, and they ended up going for the field goal attempt and missing. That feels just lackluster. I'm sure Sean McDermott ended up doing the right thing. He mostly always does, but it was just situations like that where it's like, man, this game, you're allowing a Miami Dolphins team to stay in, and we got to put them away somehow. And it seemed like every opportunity you had to really put the game away, either some decision or something happened to get in the Bills' way of doing anything to get any type of arm's length on this team.
Yeah, I mean, there was so many mistakes that were avoidable. I mean, even Josh Allen with removing, was it Roquan Davis's hat or helmet that he removed on the
Yes.
play?
Wilkins. He took Wilkins' hat out. Wilkins was grabbing him by the man parts. I don't know if I would be able to not respond.
That is true.
That's a tough one for me. But the halftime, what was Josh doing at half with the ball? Like the time management towards the end of the game, we saw again, and it popped up in the fourth quarter. Just everything seemed off. Like maybe just too much pressure coming down on them at once. I don't know.
Well, and what also stood out to me in that drive at the end of the first half is they had 2 timeouts at the end of the half that they had because they took a timeout, and I'm sure there had to be some reason for it, but they took the first timeout on like 4 when I think it was right after the Dolphins went 3 and out after the Bills' first touchdown. Maybe it was. I think they just used it when they were about to receive a punt. They burned a timeout for whatever reason, so they didn't have an extra timeout there. If they have that extra timeout, do they maybe get some better field position?
But even the muff snap, he could have just downed it. I don't know. It just everything just felt like every decision that needed to be the right decision at the moment ended up being the wrong decision.
I do think there's some weird rules about, because I think I saw Bruce talking about it online, and I think it happened last week, or maybe it happened in college, that if you fumble it like that and then you spike it, I think it becomes intentional grounding. I think. I saw Bruce saying that.
If Josh is that smart and knew that, kudos to him. And kudos to Bruce for knowing that. I didn't know that.
I know there was some weird spike stuff in week 1 and week 2 or something like that too.
Maybe that was on Josh's brain. I don't know. It just seemed like every time they needed to have the right decision made in the moment, the wrong thing happened. In my opinion, again, the bot might be right. I haven't got a chance to look at the 4th down bot, and McDermott might have made the right decision. But I didn't see anything in this game that was like, oh, the team did the responsible thing here. But again, a tough game to have that in such a wonky game, right? Yeah. Did you have one that was a responsible play of the game? Did you have anything?
I do have. I think the very last defensive stop was perfectly executed. I think everything, they put everyone in the box, stopped them behind the line, and then I mean Von Miller almost picked that pass off. And then
I thought they had a safety on one of those rush attempts. Yeah. It looked like they got him behind the goal line. Yeah.
And they put him in a situation where they have to punt from the 1 yard line, get them to punt it off their guy's back and gate. I mean, after botching their goal line offense there, that had a chance to go 50 yards, how much of it was, with reasonable time left. So I thought that was probably the most impressive thing they were able to do on defense. The fact that they, I think with like a minute 40, whatever it was, or 2 minutes left, that they, got stopped to get the ball back and even have a chance to win, was incredibly impressive. And so, in a game where there was a lot of coaching miscues and player miscues, being able to get that stop there was, I think, responsible.
I like it. So let's continue on. Thank you to our the kind folks at Uncle Jumbo's. We love you guys. Thank you for sponsoring us. I didn't have any post game Uncle Jumbo's because I don't want to drink this angry with the Miami Dolphins. Bad things will probably happen to my Twitter tonight if I'm start drinking and talking to Miami Dolphins fans. So nobody wants to see that. We don't need that. Greg would get mad at me if I start fighting with a bunch of Miami fans all night. So we're gonna try to keep it kind here. But thank you to our good friends at Uncle Jumbo's. We love you guys, and hopefully next week we're back to drinking some victory Uncle Jumbo's, and you guys are too. Let's go into the defensive side of the ball. I want to hear your thoughts here. Defensive backs, we'll start with right out of the gate. They had obviously a tough day just because of the youth on this. Talk about how they performed here in your opinion. This first start, what was it? 3 total starts out of the back cornerback group and safety group.
So if I had told you coming into the game that Tua would throw for 187 yards and the Dolphins got held to 21 total points with who they had, and I told you that Jamarcus Ingram had to play meaningful snaps in this game, I think you probably would have taken that before this game.
Sure.
I think it wasn't pretty. I counted 3 plays that Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde probably play. I think they stopped that touchdown, that very first touchdown that kind of got in between Elam and Daquan Johnson. The deep pass on third and
22. Oh my God.
Which I think some of that falls on Frazier and McDermott. They did the thing where
Cover
they rushed
two.
cover two, but they rushed three. I think they rushed three on that play and gave two a bunch of time to make that play and on a guy who was really fast.
And good play call against cover two there.
Yeah.
Got right where you want it.
Yeah, it was, it's kind of what Stephon Diggs did against Tennessee last week.
Yeah.
And it just, some of that falls on the coaching, but, besides that, I think about as well as you could hope for rookies or for two rookies and two guys essentially making their first starts in the NFL can do in this game. There was the flag on the defensive receiver flag towards the end of the game that gave him another set of downs and down the goal line.
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one, there. So.
I know there was some debate on Twitter. In my opinion on that one, the ball's long gone. And I know it's a quick bang thing. It happens really fast, but the rule is you can't hit a defensive receiver. And he was absolutely defensive. There's no chance at the catch. And he nailed him shoulder to head. That's going to get called every time.
And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I mean, do you remember a whole lot of Tyreek Hill in this game? Like Tyreek Hill, a guy who's traditionally burned him, wasn't that much of a problem.
Yeah,
and even outside of, that one really big pass on 3rd and 22, there weren't a lot of chunk plays that they allowed. Yeah. So I think about as good as you could hope they would have played.
Yeah, considering the circumstances and in the context of what we're talking about here, we're talking about first ever NFL starts for, Jaquan Johnson's definitely waited his turn and I think is probably deserving of being able to start in an NFL game, but tough assignment to come out and start an NFL game against Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and how well Tua has been playing in this offense has been schemed up. Definitely a tough task for them. But to give you a rundown here, Jalen Waddle did have 4 receptions, 102 yards, 25.5 per. He had 2 explosive plays. He had a 32-yarder earlier on in the game, and then that 45-yarder on a 3rd and 22, which was really just a backbreaker of a play and probably the game-changing play in this one. And really, that is what opened up this Miami offense and allowed them to take the lead in this game. Tyreek Hill, like you said, not much, 2 for 33, 16 yards per on 4 targets. So like you said, if that was what on Wednesday I told you the Bills were going to limit Tyreek Hill to 2 catches for 33 yards and Jalen Waddle just 4 receptions. Granted, you got the 2 big plays and 100 yards. But if I told you those 2, that was going to be the production you got out of them, you would have thought the Buffalo Bills were going to win this game 40-10, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Tua had 186 yards today.
Yeah.
Like it's you can't. I think there was some on Twitter people hoping that Jaquan Johnson was going to come in and be the next big starter for this team, but it's not practical to expect these guys to come in and replicate all pro performance.
There's always going to be a drop off, right? Like
all pro performance that hasn't missed a start together in 5 years. 5 years they haven't missed a start together.
Yeah.
So the first time Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier have had to call a game without these guys. So
and they're a big piece of what the defense does. Poyer and Hyde, like they're the way they disguise coverage, the pre-step stuff. That is probably the thing I'm most interested to look back on when we get the all 22 this week. Is I'll probably dial it up and just focus on Hamlin and Johnson and see how they performed it. But again, tough tasks for them. There's a ripple effect of all this stuff with Elam and Benford also getting officially their first starts, right? They've rotated in. Benford has been the starting guy, but neither one of them went out as the starting cornerback on the boundary, and they both got their first official, hey, you're going the full length of this thing. And so you have 2 safeties getting their first starts with 2 cornerbacks really still playing early in their rookie career here, getting essentially their first starts. That's a lot of the Bills have benefited from having continuity in this back 7 here for the last 4 years, right? When Levi Wallace was here, you had guys here for 4 to 5 years together. Obviously, Levi's gone. So you've introduced some new elements to this continuity, but the communication has still been there, especially with the safeties, the linebackers, Taron Johnson, and that ability to pass stuff off. I'm sure that there was difficult moments in this game where stuff that these guys just haven't seen together before happen and miscommunications happen and things didn't get passed off the right way. However, it's sort of similar like we talk about with the offensive line outside of that big 3rd and 22 play and maybe the 32 or the 45 yard and the 32 yarder. Outside of those, it didn't really show up. Like we talk about with the offensive line, if we're talking about a specific guy, he probably had a bad day. And I feel like with this defensive backfield, even though we had a lot of no-name guys back there, guys with not a lot of experience, you didn't see them just getting burnt and picked on or any of the things that maybe I was concerned going into a game like this where you have top wide receivers in the NFL and all this new experience that somebody would just get exposed on a play and that they would just go after that all day long and keep working that. But I think the Bills scheme, and if you play well enough within the scheme, doesn't allow for somebody to just come out and pick on one of these young guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this scheme, you said it exactly. I think this defense, regardless who's out there, has always been greater than the sum of the parts defense. Mm-hmm. And just the way it's played and the way it's called, it kind of has some natural protections against big plays
and hide some stuff. Yeah,
hide some stuff. That's a good way to put it. Has a chance to hide some stuff, and it'll which means sometimes getting burnt underneath on some stuff, which also happened on some of those plays. But I thought the one play that did stand out to me, Damar Hamlin came in and had that really good run stop.
Yes, yeah.
I think was right before. I think the next play was a sack, and then it was the 3rd and 22. I think it was on that drive.
Yep. Hamlin also there was on the first drive. I think it would end up going to the fullback, who's actually a pretty good pass catching fullback. And Hamlin came up, and the guy looked directly at Damar Hamlin's eyes, and he heard the footsteps and dropped the ball. And so I counted that one for Hamlin as a big play.
Yeah, it shows that the Bills, they have a type in the defensive room, and it helps. If having guys that can hit, having guys that aren't afraid of the ball, aren't afraid to come in and play, it helps, and it's a reason why this is such a high floor defense.
Yeah, for sure. So let's, kudos to those guys being put in a really difficult spot, I think, for the first start of their career. Not an ideal way to come in again with multiple guys not being available for this game. You have a lot of guys starting. I think they held up as well as you could ask in the type of situation they were put in. I don't believe that they were the reason for the Bills' loss in this game. And that was really all I was hoping for, is that this unit didn't come out and throw up all over themselves and force the Bills to get in a shootout. It wasn't that kind of game at all. And so let's go over to the linebacking core here for a minute, because I'm not going to be able to get over Matt Milano dropping that pick 6. There's nothing that you can say. There's nothing Greg could come on and say. Nobody could say anything to me that's going to get me over that one, because that's the game. That's ball game right there, in my opinion. If he takes that, the Bills have all the momentum, and they're leaving that game with a win. And that's how close the game of football is, right? Like, he had that in his hands, and that was a clean pick 6. But outside of that, how'd you think the linebackers performed outside of the dropped pick 6 game winner that we have to sleep with all night?
He had a really good run stop. He had a couple really good run stops, it felt like, throughout the game. I think Edmonds had a sack, or he was back near one of the sacks. He also there was one play that really stood out to me. It was a 9 or 10 yard play, I think, but it was Waddle caught a slant, and he stopped Waddle from behind.
Quick. Yeah.
Real quick tackle on Waddle. Really quick tackling. I think Edmonds has been playing 2 really good games. I know he's a super controversial figure among Bills fans, but the last 2 games, I think he's been really good. Matt Milano's been really good. I really think the linebackers this year have been maybe the strongest part of this defense with how well they play. I think they're both playing the best football of their career. Yeah. They don't get, they don't stop. Though they don't get that goal line defense stop that they get at the end of the game without them being back there. So if you want to point any fingers on defense, I think the last place you would point your fingers to the linebackers, because I think they, aside, like you said, from dropping a pick 6, they did everything they could possibly do in this game.
Yeah, and I poke fun at Matt Milano here for dropping that pick 6, but even just to be in position to make that play, to get a read on Tua. Again, we give Tua a hard time, but I think he's a better quarterback than we want to give him credit for here with Bills Mafia. I think he showed that today. He actually had a pretty efficient game. He didn't go off. This Miami offense didn't come in and totally blow the doors off this Bills defense, but he, considering the type of defense he went against, even with the injuries, the type of scheme that he went up against, he played effectively. He played an efficient game. But these linebackers, I think, did do a good job. And again, haven't gotten a chance to watch the all 22, but I think when we go back, we'll see a lot of the things that they probably wanted to do with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle over the middle probably were disrupted from the length and athleticism by these linebackers over the middle of the field. I think you'll probably see a lot of stuff got taken away between Edmonds, Milano, and even we kind of can put Taron Johnson in on this conversation in that nickel scheme in the middle of the field. I think that they probably bog some stuff down. So I'm excited. Hopefully Eric, a big linebackers guy, if you can convince him to start watching some linebackers, you get some good film review. So Eric, if you're out there watching, go tell me what those guys did here. But I think overall linebackers did a pretty good job in this game, and it wouldn't be the reason that we're talking about a loss here. Let's shift over again to the big men here, defensive side of the ball, defensive line group. What were your thoughts here on the defensive line group? Not the most dominant performance that they've had here so far this season. What went on?
Well, I mean, I think one of the themes of the show, one of the through lines of the show so far, the weather. This is a lot. This is a defensive line that kind of prides itself on being able to rotate guys in. Someone gets tired, someone fresh comes on, and when you take away Ed Oliver and Jordan Phillips, and you basically are cutting down that rotation as much as they are, that you don't have that same freshness. So even they didn't play a ton, they get tired. It's hard to maintain that. Von Miller, I think played it. He was to his face a couple times. I saw never got home. Greg Rousseau had 2 sacks or a sack and a half. I don't know if they credited that. I don't know if they credited the second one to him.
He got to have 1.5 sacks, and they gave Hamlin half.
They gave Hamlin half that sack. So, but still, they, all things considered, the ends I think did about what they should do. You don't normally want to rely on guys like Tim Settle and Daquan Jones to be the main source of pass rush from the interior, but they had to, and that's what happened. They didn't have their full complement, and not, to blame injury for this game, but just they didn't have their full rotation of guys and defensive line guys when you have to do that, especially big guys. You saw how much we talked about how much our offensive line's going down. Think about defensive line, how much pushing that is, how hard that is, and they just didn't have their full normal rotation of guys in there. And I'll be interesting to see the snap stats come out, the snap counts come out, because I'm sure they probably played more than they normally have to play, or they had to play Basham and Espinosa more because, and they're not their strongest pass rushers on this team. They forced some quick throws. They forced, I don't know what the average time to throw in this game was, but it felt like a lot of times Tua didn't have a ton of time to hold on to the ball. So again, like a lot of these other positions, I think given the circumstances, did about as good as you can hope for. You wish they get a little bit more push here or there, but I think with the personnel they had, they did about as good as you could hope.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed in this group because I thought, obviously you had the injuries up front with Oliver and Settle, but to have a group that you have a dominant player in Von Miller, you have an upcoming elite run defender and pretty good pass rusher in Greg Rousseau. And you have this depth that we talk about all the time. And I thought that would really shine in this game, especially with how the Bills tend to rotate. Again, maybe you don't have the ability to do that so much in the interior, even though I think you could probably move your Shaq Lawsons, Boogie Basham's inside. And again, I'm interested to see that snap count too and where guys were lined up because I don't track that stuff during the game. But I really thought this would be more of a benefit to the Bills in this heat, in this game, even with the lack of depth that they had in that position. They're still pretty deep, right? You're still going to Shaq Lawson's, AJ Epinessa's, Boogie Basham's, and we just didn't see really anything from these guys. And we saw, if Miami fans had any grief in this game, obviously I think the Bills were more banged up and they had more issues heading into this game, but Miami's offensive line is a little bit in shambles, and they were throughout this game. Greg Little was in and out of this lineup throughout the entire game. They had guys kind of rotating just like the Bills did, and the Bills were never really able to take advantage of it. Von Miller really didn't show up until the end of the game, although he had really one that won't go on a stat sheet that I absolutely love. His just presence. It was just showing his presence. It was a Miami drive as a 3rd and 16, and Von Miller got held on the play. He was coming in. They did a stunt. He got held on the play. Bills end up declining. It forces Miami to punt. It basically ended the drive. It doesn't go as a stat for Von Miller, but just his ability to not be blocked in that situation causes that. But outside of that, and that last drive of the game, didn't see much from him. Didn't see much from Basham, Shaq Lawson, AJ Epinesa, these guys that in a game like this, somebody needs to step up and make that play that we're talking about. And really, you want it to come from the guys that have fresh legs. Nobody rotates like the defensive line. You don't see them in the defensive backfield. You're not going to see that from Milanos and Edmonds. Really, maybe the wide receivers rotate enough, but everyone else on the field has to go out there and play in this type of heat. I would expect them to take advantage of a banged up Miami offensive line in that same heat and they just didn't seem to. Maybe just that last drive that you talked about and that you gave credit for, but outside of that, I didn't see them really dominating this game at any point.
That's a really good point. This was a really banged up Miami offensive line. It's already not great. I put out there 26th in pass block win rate coming in, and you would hope a guy like Tim Settle, who I was really high on, makes more of an impact. You're never really going to get a pass rush from a guy like Daquan Jones. That's not really his job. And you're right.
But Settle's still like these guys. There's some of these guys are banged up. So it's hard for me. I get it, but you're right. If you're going up against a banged up offensive line, you gotta at least win more of these one-on-one battles. You don't have to win all of them, but win more of them, right?
It definitely felt like throughout this game that there was no one. I think one of the things Poyer and Hyde do so well, and I'll even throw Trey White into that discussion, that it seems like when the Bills, I saw someone in the chat use the word closer. They're really closers in that secondary line. It always seems like when the Bills need a big play, when they need a big pass breakup, or
Milano was it. That was the big play.
Yeah, that was the big, and they're just, but outside of that, it didn't feel like there was, and there was a closer play out there. And like I said, the Milano one should have been it, but it just didn't feel like there was
nobody made the play. Right.
There was no deep play. It feels like whenever they win, there's a deep play, and it definitely was never a key defensive play in this game. It felt like.
We didn't see it, unfortunately, and they had it right. I cover toxic differential every single week, and it ended 4-4 for the Bills. We'll go over real quick. For the Bills, they had a 28-yard catch by Diggs to start the game, 27-yarder from McKenzie a little bit later, the 43-yard run by Moss, and then a 22-yard reception from Singletary. So none really were. I mean, the Moss run was pretty game breaking, and the McKenzie catch. On the Miami side, they had the strip sacks fumble, and that was probably the two biggest plays in this game, were that strip sack fumble and the 45-yarder on 3rd and 2. Like that, those two directly lead to them getting in scoring range and scoring in this game, and that's all the difference in a game like this. So tough one here for the whole defense a little bit, but I think considering the circumstances, performed about as good as we could ask for. Context variables, big part of football, and with all the injuries on the back end and coming in facing a pretty hot offense, and an offense, say what you want about Mike McDaniels, I think he's kind of a phony. I don't love his shtick, but he's a smart offensive coach. Smart people call him a smart offensive coach. I'm going to listen to him, and for them to kind of keep it in check and keep this game within reach with all the bleeding out that they had for injuries really is a testament to the depth that they have here in Buffalo right now on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back to what I said at the start of the show. I mean, it took the 4 defensive starters being out, depth being out for a 2-point win on a 2-point win where you were held to 21 points. So
crazy.
Which, if that's what it takes to beat the Buffalo Bills, then I'm not going to be too concerned down the road.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let's flip it over. I'm going to kick this one to you. Special teams, something I hate talking about, but here we are. We're going to have to talk about them a little bit here because there was a missed field goal. There's some issues. So talk about sort of your overall view of special teams here this week.
Again, you had the big punt block, which was maybe it was more of a Morstead issue, but I mean, they've had to put, they pushed the guy back into him. Yep. The Tyler Bass field goal. I mean, that again.
What happened? I didn't even see the hold. Look at everything looked good.
It looked like on the game replay that it looked like Sam Martin thought someone tipped it. I'd love to go back and see if someone tipped it or if that was just a really badly missed hit ball, because it looked like he hit the ball.
Clean,
fine.
Laces route.
It seems like something somewhere kind of went wrong.
Just a little nick is all it takes, I guess. Yeah.
But besides that, I mean, there wasn't anything that really stood out on special teams. I thought Jamison Crowder had a couple decent returns. Thomas Morstead really had a nice punt on the free kick at the end of the game, and I think Crowder did a good job of bringing it back to somewhere reasonable. Because once he punted that, I thought they were going to get the ball at the 10-yard line. And I thought that would have been even more problematic than it was. But I don't think there's anything. I can't think of anything besides the missed field goal.
Coverage seemed pretty good from my side, especially with some speed on the special teams for the Miami Dolphins. Yeah, the missed field goal was the really only mistake that I saw, unless I'm forgetting anything specific. But tough one because kind of creates a different situation if you hit that one in terms of how this game ends up going, especially with it ended up being a close game like that. But rare miss from Tyler Bass. Gonna chalk it up. We'll have to watch that back and see if there was an actual tip on that one, or if anyone knows here in the chats if anyone's seen a video on that was a tip, because that one just looked weird to me. Usually you can see Jason Taylor here saying that was a Bass flat out miss. Just looked real weird coming off of his foot, but it was that kind of afternoon here. And so we'll kind of go over to that and talk about coaching here. Just a weird afternoon going into this game. This whole week was just not what the Bills prepare for a lot of things, right? We hear Sean McDermott talking about all the preparation they do and all the different things that they plan for and participate for. I don't think you plan for 14 injuries showing up on your injury report on Friday on a short week after a physical game against the Tennessee Titans early in the season. I don't think you prepare for the 3 starts from your DBs going into a game against a high potent, fast offense. I don't think you plan for Mitch Morse to be out in this game, all these veteran leaders to be out in this game. Getting the news that Micah Hyde is out for the season. What a blow, gut-wrenching blow to one Bills drive here this week. And you still have to turn around and prepare for a game. While I'm frustrated, and I called them out earlier for the responsible drive of the game, what I will give the coaches of this Buffalo Bills team credit for is getting these guys ready to go out and play a physical football game that was an absolutely competitive football game with all the circumstances feeling pretty much stacked against them. They coached this team up pretty well, and they were in a competitive football game. And I don't know if you put that list of injured players out and took a comparable list of any other team and you took them out of the game, I don't know that any other teams could hang in a football game like this and make it that competitive. And the Bills did it and didn't seem like they had too much of a issue. Nobody bled out. Nobody vomited all over themselves. They played a competitive game of football against all odds here this week. And so kudos to them. It's hard for me to be super upset about the loss, knowing that the guys laid it all out there, and hats off to the coaches for getting everybody ready for this moment. Just didn't end up coming out the way they wanted.
Yeah. And again, the specifics, I see people in the chat talking about, time management. I really didn't have issue with time management. I'll have
to go back and watch. Yeah.
Sean McDermott didn't tell Josh Allen to throw the ball in the middle of the field with how much ever time was left when he threw that ball. Right. They had no time.
One, yeah.
They had to use those timeouts on defense, and it's up to Isaiah McKenzie and Josh Allen, the offense, to find a way to stop that clock. I will say, I do think that those refs, I probably would have gotten the playoff. I thought those refs moved very leisurely to get that ball.
There's no sense of urgency.
Yes, and I'm sure. I know there's weird. I think there's a weird rule where there needs to be 3 seconds anyways to technically call a play or something like that.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting. But besides that, the only calls that I really had issues with was the 3rd and 22 that ended up with the big Jaden Waddle catch to just rush 3, because that always seems to burn the Bills.
Yeah.
And then lining Josh up out of shotgun at the goal line to do what I don't know if it was a zone. I think it was a zone read that ended up losing a yard there. I think he ended up off the. Josh is so money when it comes to goal line, 4th and in, or inches to go, quarterback sneaks. I just thought they got way too cute. I think they could have ran it again on that 4th and 1, on that when it was 3rd and 1. I think they could have still ran it and probably been fine. So I think that is my least favorite Dorsey call to date. And then again, I talked about at the top of the show, the handing it off to Moss on the second drive, back-to-back plays, getting 3rd and 8, and then Miami was able to. Yeah, go ahead.
I will say that one, I have been thinking about it for a while because I'm frustrated with Moss and the way that they're using him. I'm not sure how much Dorsey. I know he probably ultimately has the final say, but I was listening in on it was either one of the press conferences with Dorsey or one of the embedded episodes, but I think the position coach has a good amount of say in the usage of the running backs. And again, this one was tough because Miami so hot. It's hard to just put Devin Singleton out there the entire time with the usage of Moss. But yeah, it's tough to continue to see, especially early in the game when you've got momentum and you got your offense is driving, to kind of shoot yourself in the foot continuously with just Moss 1-yard runs and then just go back to that, back-to-back plays. Just feels like a smack in the face to everything that feels right about what we're supposed to do about football. So I agree with you that it just feels I hate it. These guys are smarter than me about football, so I'm just going to leave them to that they know something I don't. But it doesn't look good from our end, and I think Bills Mafia is getting frustrated. I'm getting frustrated with that. So overall, I think just like every position group, I'm not trying to cop out on all these answers of how people perform, but I think overall this is a tough one to judge because just what the labor of getting these guys up for this game and having a competitive game is good coaching in and of itself. So to have some mistakes throughout the game and things to be a little bit panicky, it's tough to get super mad about it. And again, a couple people here made this comment. We can kind of shift more over to our overall thoughts here. A couple of guys made a comment in that this game mattered a lot more to the Miami Dolphins. I think we saw that early on and how injuries were handled before the game of who was playing and who wasn't for these two teams. I said it right from the start of the week that this was their Super Bowl, not the Bills. They are proving who they are in the NFL and that they can maybe be considered a playoff team, maybe be considered a wild card team and a team that can beat some good teams if they get in. But they're not the team in the division. And I still don't think they are, even after this loss. I mean, the Bills were about as banged up and beat up. You put out the South Park GIF the other day of what's his name getting just beat, just sit there, being beat up. That's the Bills right now. They are just barely hanging on. They don't know if the fight's over or not. And Miami was able to get out of this one with a win, but definitely means more to them than the Bills. This is a week 3, another game in the books. It stinks to take that loss to an AFC East opponent, but an AFC opponent. But I don't think that in February or even December, January, we're going to care a whole lot about this one.
Yeah, if I see, I've been eyeballing the chat the whole time, and if I have one piece of grieve how you grieve a loss, how you want to grieve a loss, but take a breath. Going 20-0 is never really super realistic. No. You're gonna have losses in there, and just like think about this like the win game last year. It was such extreme weather conditions with the heat, such extreme conditions with the injury that there isn't a whole lot to extrapolate from this game in the long term. Josh Allen is still the dude. Guys will, it seems like, Ed Oliver, that first week he finished the game. Mitch Morse finished the game last week. These guys will come back. Gabe Davis will get healthy. Guys are going to come back. And
just hopefully none of the things we saw, like Diggs, hopefully that was just heat. There's no injuries there. Hopefully they get a clear bill of health going in the week. Anyone that was banged up here today.
And I will say, if I had told you the first 3 games, LA, Tennessee, in Miami, if I had told you the Bills were 2-1 after that, you'd probably say, okay, you'd probably be fine with that, right? I don't think 2-1 at this point is going to be. Miami's going to lose games. We're going to get Miami at home when it might be bad weather that they're not used to.
Sure.
So
I would have felt better losing to the Rams, to be honest, and just the big picture, which losses are weighted and matter more. But yeah, ultimately, I don't think this one's going to bother us or bother the Bills come December when it's who's going to win the division, who's going to be, competing for home field advantage. I think, other teams are going to suffer losses within their divisions within the AFC. So I think that'll be fine. I do think the Bills will still have more wins than Miami. I think you're right. Josh Allen's still that dude. This team showed extreme amount of depth, extreme amount of grit to be able to get up for this game. Most of these guys are coming back, right? Hyde's gone for the year. That's tough. Greg and I haven't even had a chance to process that yet. That one's a tough blow, but Poyer's coming back. It sounded like Poyer was questionable to play going right up to the end here this week. Oliver is probably coming back. So manage some of these injuries, get out. But to start the season, I was warning people, and I saw it very realistically that the Bills could be 3-3 going into that Green Bay game. Like that, when I looked at this schedule, that looked really realistic to me. And even in that, if the Bills are 3-3 heading into the bye, I'm not off the process yet, right? I'm not panicking. I'm not freaking out. The NFL season's a marathon, right? They and I think the Bills showed their understanding of that and how they handled some of the injuries today and how they dealt with people. I think, again, if this game mattered more, Jordan Poyer's out there playing. Mitch Morse is out there playing. And Oliver's probably out there playing. They're managing guys because they believe they're about to play 20 games. And I don't think Miami Dolphins are playing 20 games, right? Like that's where this Bills team is. And so we'll see coming up here. It's going to be an interesting week injury-wise. Any other final thoughts here on the game here before we start to wrap it up for the people?
I'm just more annoyed that there's going to be a lot of Dolphins fans in my mentions. I talked a lot of crap.
I talked so much stuff. Yeah.
I talked a lot of stuff that I'm not going to be able to.
You know what? my hat's off to him. You know what I have said for a while? If Tua can click, and Miami can win some games, right? Tua's a quarterback that can win games for you, and he was effective today against a banged up Bills defense. So good for him. If he can keep playing effective, efficient football, they can win a lot of football games. They can be competitive. They've got enough talent over there to even push the Bills and be a game or two back from them. But I just don't think they're there yet. But good for them. Miami fans, enjoy this one. Have a fantastic ride here this September. I've been a Bills fan for a long time. In that drought era, we had a lot of hot starts in September, and it didn't mean much come December. And so if the Miami fans, you can come into my mentions, talk as much as you want. I said a lot of stuff this week. I don't think anything too egregious or untrue, but you're welcome to come dunk on me and retweet my stuff. But come December, January, if you are where I think you are, I'm coming back for you, and I'm going to retweet and come back for all of the tweets that you come my way. So I'm confident where my team will be at the end. So go ahead and get your victory lap in now, because I will be bookmarking things and prepared to come back to you in February for the Super Bowl parade and have a fun afternoon retweeting everybody. So Ryan, my man, I know you're going to be busy writing up a bunch of stuff here this week. So what can the fans expect from you here going forward this week?
I don't know what I got working on this week yet.
Yeah.
Everyone else kind of has a weekly role. I kind of just kind of freelance and find topics that interest me. I normally have something that comes out around the middle of the week. So just follow at Sports Rock 2, follow Cover One. All my stuff is there.
Yep.
Along with anything else that I tweet out.
Awesome. And folks, don't forget to sign up for our One Pass Club access. You get all kinds of great stuff. You get the great shirt. If you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing the shirt here live. People have been starting to tweet us. They've been tagging. The shirts are starting to come out. So anyone that did order or signed up for One Pass, keep an eye on the mail. Stuff is coming out. We're making our way through all this stuff. I appreciate all the support so far. We're getting all that stuff out to you. But with One Pass, like Ryan said, a lot of the guys are already working on content, getting it out there, and a lot of it's going to be only available if you are a One Pass member. Right now, the Slack channel is bumping off. My phone is just flying right now. During game day, Slack channel is where to be. Pre-game, post-game, during the game, wherever you want it. It's constant going. Great community of like-minded Bills fans. They're all there. You got to be a One Pass member to get in there. Exclusive members-only content, in-depth analysis, including scheme play and player breakdowns, scouting reports and analytic analysis, access on unlimited devices, access to the Cover One community, like I said, the Slack channel, access to all the Cover One contributors and behind the scenes content, all yours for $57 a year, because like I said, the Bills are going to make it to Super Bowl 57, even despite this bump in the road. So head over to cover1.net/1pass, get signed up. It really is. People ask me, Ryan, all the time is, what can we do to help out? Obviously, likes, subscribes while you're here watching this video. We appreciate you being here. Make sure you like and subscribe. But joining One Pass is really the ultimate way to help out. It keeps us being able to have all the access to all the data we need to keep all this great content coming for you guys. Pay the writers, keep everything here at Cover One, keep the lights on. So make sure you're subscribed there. And I got nothing else to say about this one. I'm sure follow me at Aaron Quinn 716. I'll have a bunch of tweets firing off sort of as this loss settles in. But the Bills do end up taking a loss here to the Miami Dolphins, 21-19 in Miami. The Bills are now 2-1. Miami Dolphins 3-0, leading the division. So we'll see how that stacks up as the weeks come. But you'll catch me again here this Wednesday previewing you for the Ravens. I'm going to have our good friend Hans Uber Hansen on the show here, helping me to preview the Ravens. But other than that, this has been an episode of Cover One Buffalo post-game show, and we are out.